tell me about how your time at Lees-McRae College prepared you for the road ahead.
My family was not in a position to be able to send me to college. And I worked a part-time job all through high school, saved my money. And with my savings and a Presbyterian church scholarship and a work scholarship at Lees-McRae, I was able to go to school. Although I took a break after my 2 years at Lees-McRae, all my credits transferred except my math credit, which we won't go into. But and I was able 20 years later to get to apply for a degree from Virginia Commonwealth. I went to school for 6 years at night and got my bachelor's, and then subsequently a master's from George Washington. But it wasn't the educational background as much as it was what I learned about myself, what I learned about my faith, what I learned about the world from Lees-McRae. It gave me a background that I probably would not have gotten anywhere else. And I made friends that were my friends for life, Captain Sullivan being an example. So Lees-McRae prepared me for the bigger world that I would not have expected at all when I went there. I laugh and tell people I was a shy little girl when I went there. Nobody believes it anymore.
Oh, well, thank you, Ms. Walker.
Well, the 50s were an interesting time, both in our country and those who are seeking an education. It was a wonderful time in the country post World War II. It was fun. It was there was much more naivete is probably a good word. I was ill prepared for college. I had not intended or even imagined going to college. I didn't even know what it was. I was all set to finish high school and work in a factory at home. And had I done that, I would have probably been happy. But I had a wonderful opportunity given to me by Lees-McRae when no other institution would even admit me with my credentials from high schools, the courses I had taken. I had no college preparatory courses. I was naive. I was full of it. I thought I was good to go, but I really wasn't. And Lees-McRae did a wonderful job taking a naive country bumpkin from the mountains of Virginia and in 2 years instilling in me confidence. That confidence, real confidence in my naivete was overwhelmed by that confidence of being able to learn and to enjoy learning. And at the end of those 2 years, I had good grades, I had a good experience. I was qualified to jump off for the rest of my life to a wonderful life that much of the excitement and travel and experiences that I have enjoyed in life, they were because of that opportunity given me by Lees-McRae. I have forever been grateful for that. I have forever felt an obligation to Lees-McRae because of what they did for me in those years in 1957. I'm forever grateful. And it was a wonderful experience. The class, we then lived on campus. The girls lived in the city block on campus, and we were all like living together in a home place. It was a family, much more than could ever be the case now, even no matter how enjoyable and how much togetherness exists. There's so many distractions, and there's so many other opportunities. And that's a point I'd also like to make, that the youth today could have gone to college so many different places, so can do so many different things. I hope that the youth of today would be aware of and appreciative of how many opportunities, how many options you have that we didn't have. We, in most cases, might be able to go to 1 or 2 schools, and the limiting factor was money. Everything was good in the 50s, except there was not yet a lot of money. And I think I'm remembering right that my cost at Lees-McRae was $480 a semester. And that was very hard to come by.
Yeah, it was.
So now, what were some of your favorite memories in particular around this time of year? You know, normally we'd be celebrating homecoming and coming back, and I met you a year ago today, I think, Captain Sullivan, sitting right here in the Alumni House, and we were sharing stories. And, you know, what's your favorite part about this time of year and homecoming from when you were a student? What was it like then? And when you came back as an alum, what were some of the experiences that you remember?
I don't remember much about homecoming when I was a student, as much as I do later years. I've come back, even though I live in Virginia still. Ken and I are both native Virginians, and I've never abandoned my state. But it's a 6-hour drive from the area near Richmond where I live. So, but when I was younger, that was nothing, you know, jump in the car and go. My best friend, Joan Michaels from that class, lived in Charlotte. So I would drive to Charlotte. We would get in the car and go to Lees-McRae for the weekend for homecoming. And that was just always such a wonderful, special time. The campus is gorgeous in the fall. It's beautiful all the time, but the fall is just marvelous up there. And we would be able to go back and see the things that we remembered that we loved about the campus, and then the wonderful changes, the new buildings and the expansions, and being able to say, oh, that's where the biology department used to be. And oh, remember the library wasn't there, it was over there. And walk the campus and look at all the places that had meant so much to us. And then renewing those friendships, seeing each other, reconnecting, catching up with each other. To me, that's homecoming, those opportunities. And frankly, that's still true. How exciting it was when we had our 60th reunion this past summer and got to see people catch up with folks that we hadn't seen in years. And it just was really, homecoming's a special time.
That's a special time. And when we were in school, homecoming, I remember that a big event was a football game. We had football team back then, and the homecoming was centered around the football game was the big event. But I can remember that there were a lot of alumni came back, and of course we didn't have that ability as students to have a previous time together. Coming together again was a big event. I felt the significance of that and enjoyed it much more after 10 or 15 years away from class. Homecoming was the event that you know most of. Your classmates who could and would come would be there, and you'd have a chance to relive old memories and old times together, and that was very enjoyable. This time of year was, like Betty said, was a beautiful and the best time, I thought, of seasonally to be at Lees-McRae. This was before vacation. Our summer homes were peppered all over the mountains. The mountains were crystal clear, pristine. They were very few homes. In fact, up a dirt road toward the Beach Mountain, at the end of that dirt road, halfway up the mountain was one house. The rest of the way there was none. There was a road that we hiked up, and a four-wheel drive Jeep could make it, and they were sheep in the upper meadows of Beach Mountain. And an old gent who was the shepherd who kept the sheep up there. In other words, there was no humanity on Beach Mountain. Every Sunday, at this time of year in particular, most every student who could, and that was most everybody, could hike to the top of Beach Mountain. On Sunday morning, we had breakfast in the cafeteria, and they gave the cafeteria the rest of the day off as part of their only time off for the whole week. So we had we called it a bag lunch or a poke lunch, some sandwiches and fruit in a paper bag. And we carried that with us and hiked to the top of Beach Mountain and ate our lunch and drank water out of a spring at the top of the pinnacles. It had one aluminum dipper that we all used to drink water out of the spring and eat our bag lunch. And then coming back was a little more exciting. We all hiked together up the main road. Coming back, different groups gathered for different reasons and because of different people, and groups of 5, 6, 7, 8, maximum of 10 or 12. There'd be numerous groups that take off down the mountain in all directions and all ways with no established path. And we'd come out on the main road between campus and all the way down to the bottom of the hill at Elk River. And sometimes we didn't get back on time, and that got the girls in trouble. Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is we had a lot of simple but wonderful times. There's a lot more sophisticated things to do today, but you can't possibly have any more fun than we had. Banner Elk wasn't a big to-do. It was a great little town and great people that the few that we were able to see, get to know, they were really nice people. Now, as there's humanity everywhere, but while we were very remote, we had a great time.
We did.
So one of the things that we're doing now is we're launching a mentor network. And so we're matching alumni with students who've been successful in their careers. You know, one of the things, and we didn't talk about chatting about this, but as I'm hearing your stories, you know, you both are Lees-McRae legends. You know, as much as you probably don't want to hear that, or you're both probably too humble to know that. But you know, what you've done and the legacy that you've left here is something that's, you know, an indelible impression that for the next 120 years, you know, you both have left something that's, you know, always going to be part of this mountain and this history here at Lees-McRae. Was there anyone, when we think about mentors for you in the legacy you've left, was there anyone at Lees-McRae that did that for you? A mentor here, someone that made it possible, whether it was someone in your career path, someone in the libraries, but the president at the time, a dorm mom, anyone that you can remember that stands out that maybe made you who you are today and helped guide you in your path to why you give back?
Oh gosh. Well, my first thought, Katie, is that as a mentor, I would have to say Margaret Tufts. She was my English teacher, my English professor. I came from a big high school in a big city, Richmond. There were 400 kids in my graduating class. And I will never forget being in Miss Tufts' English class. And when we had proceeded on, we were going to study Hamlet. And I developed an attitude about it because I had studied it my senior year in high school. And just sort of, she picked up on the fact that I had this attitude going for the moment and quickly commented, and my maiden name was Jones, and she looked at me very straightly and said, "Miss Jones, we can always learn something new." That has stuck in my head all my life. And I think that one comment and her continued friendship, because we kept up correspondence for years, and I had visited her whenever I could come back to campus. She was just a wonderful, warm, friendly woman, but she didn't always come across that way. And I was delighted to she was always encouraging and always uplifting. And her guidance through those 2 years stuck with me. For a while, I was going to be an English teacher, and then I decided to go into human resources. As my dad used to tell me, I got paid for meddling in everybody else's lives. And it was a good thing. But I think she was just outstanding. And I always thought that I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be in a position to help other people. And like I said originally, without Lees-McRae, my high school background was similar to kids. I had excellent grades, but I didn't take college prep courses. So when Lees-McRae took me in and gave me the background to go forward, I just wanted to be part of somebody else having that experience, somebody else being able to go to school that maybe as Ken says, a lot of kids have much more opportunities than we did, but there are still those kids that going to college is a big deal. And I'd like to be part of helping that.
Thank you.
Well, as to who my mentor was or who I most respected, anybody of our time would tell you who I would answer, as most of the young men who were in athletics. Anybody that had Coach Fred I. Dickerson as a coach in any sport would tell you as they left Lees-McRae that he was the greatest influence on their life. And it would have had nothing to do with the particular sport that they participated in or his coaching per se, but he coached beyond the sport. He coached for life. And he was a wonderful example. He had an array of athletic accomplishments, and he was so talented in sports that you had to recognize that he loved Lees-McRae and he loved Lees-McRae's students, and he was at work fastening and helping all of us at Lees-McRae be better. Yet we were boys becoming men, and he helped us very much in that journey. Even back then, even the toughest and strongest and biggest young men on campus compared to today's young men were very naive, and needed a lot more help. I think youth today, when they approach college, they've already, as my dad used to say, they've already been in the back 40 in the backwoods, and they're so far ahead in life, knowledge-wise and experience-wise, than we were. So we needed and could benefit from a coach like Coach Dickerson. We call him Silent Fred because he didn't say much. He was very quiet. He never yelled. And everything he said, it was the word with bark on it, and you better listen. And it didn't take you long at all to pick up on the quality of the man and his love for and contribution to Lees-McRae and his family. And example of he was savvy. I remember when I went to Lees-McRae, I had once before going there, I've been in the office with Silent Fred, and he found out the plight of my financial inabilities, and he mustered a little more money to help me. Or it was a promise, but a promise he made was a golden one, and you could count on him. And he didn't say much, and I left not knowing or thinking, didn't give him a whole lot of credit until I later built this trust and admiration in and for him. I remember when I went to college, my mom and dad took me, and part of my scholarship or my financial ability, or it reduced my room and board, I lived free in the gymnasium. And I don't know, there was probably 20 of we guys lived in about 4 big rooms. The room I lived in at the bottom of the gymnasium housed, I think there was 9 bunk beds, and there were 2 large light bulbs that hung from a long cord from the ceiling. There were very large windows. They were large to let in light because the light bulbs didn't provide much. And when we went to college that day, my mom and dad carried me over there, and I was moving my clothes into this room that had 2 desks for 9 people and had some wooden planks, literally 2 planks with an iron pipe through the top of them that we hung our clothes on. And my mom, she was practically in tears that, you know, we weren't affluent people. We had a pretty primitive home living in the country. But that place that I was moving into really bothered her, and she was concerned about it. I could see how concerned she was. But Dad could have cared not too much more. He was anxious to get home. But anyway, Coach Dickerson came down there, and while we were moving in, he didn't say anything as usual. He introduced himself to my mom and dad, but he walked over to one of the big windows and he looked out, had to stand there. I can still see him with his hands behind his back, and looked out over the Elk Valley down behind the gymnasium. And he turned around and to all of us, he said, "Well, Ken, one thing, you've got one of the nicest views in Banner Elk." Well, after he left, you know, we all went over to when and looked out, and it was a nice view down there. It's nice woods, but we got nice woods back home. It wasn't all that impressive to my mom, dad, and I. Didn't think much about it. But later on that winter, when it snowed, there was a large pipe that ran down behind the gymnasium. I mean, it's large. I don't know exactly the diameter, but it's probably 6 to 8 feet. It was a large pipe, but it was no longer used to generate electricity at a electricity generating plant down to the bottom of the hills there. That was no longer used, but water was still running through that pipe from the mill pond. And in the wintertime, those holes, that water spewing out of those holes would freeze. So you had a cascade of beautiful ice, almost sculptured all the way down that pipe. It was beautiful. And I'd have to admit, that was one of the nicest views in Banner Elk. But he was easily one of the most influential people of my life, not just at Lees-McRae. And all of the young men who participated in his sport, I think all of them would answer the same way and say the same kinds of things about him.
Wow. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So what I want to do next is congratulate both of you on the recognition of the Captain's Class Award for 2020. And one of the things when I got here, you know, it's been, I think I'm starting my 13th month here, is as I was learning about this, I remember picking up the phone and calling Captain Sullivan and saying, I'd like you to explain to me a little bit of the history. You know, for me, you know, to stand up and, you know, have the plaques made and put them on the wall without really understanding where they originated and the why behind this, you know, help me out, because I might be just giving an award that doesn't have any meaning to me. And I wanted to understand, and, you know, you had some extremely impactful words about what the participation means, how vital it is, and why that you all have been so diligent and dedicated to include your class in correspondence and make sure they're up to date on everything going on. And even if it's $1, they're giving so that we can stay connected and continue to provide opportunities for students in the future. So if you don't mind, on behalf of accepting from the class of 1959, the Captain's Class Award for this year, if you wouldn't mind sharing with me a little bit about the history, how this started and why it's important for you all to continue to keep the class of 1959 with such high participation to Lees-McRae.
For some reason, don't remember the reason exactly, but in 1969, when we came back from our 10th reunion, I got volunteered. And you notice I said that. I was not a class officer when I was at school, but I got volunteered to be the class representative for our class. And Ken stepped up to kind of lead that effort. And we worked together. I planned all up until the time of our 25th reunion, and I planned and led that and was privileged to be part of all of that. And for a number of other years. And then I stepped back for a while. And then when the class agent program started, I was approached by the Alumni Association to take on the role of a class agent. And I was very, very flattered, and agreed to do that, which I have done along with Captain Sullivan ever since that time. And I should have gone back and looked up when it started. But anyway, we as a class have been very, very active in that program, in that Ken has taken on a lot of the reaching out. I've kept all the records and done a lot of keeping track of where people were and how to get in touch with them. Ken's done a lot of mailings and emails, and we've worked together on that.
You guys are a great team.
To live as far apart as we do, we manage really well. But all of that work together has been solely to keep others in our class attached, connected. When Ken and I were at Lees-McRae, it was a 2-year school, and most of us, many of us, went on to other colleges and other universities. I mentioned Virginia Commonwealth and George Washington. But Lees-McRae is where I'm involved. Lees-McRae is where I'm committed. And the program, the Captain's Award, allows us to stress the need for participation and the need for connection and the need to be part of something much bigger than ourselves. We as a class have been able to do some pretty outstanding things to help the campus, because we literally, each of us has a part. It doesn't matter what the part is or how big the part is. What it matters is you have a chance, through whatever amount of donation you can give, to be part of something really big, something that's meaningful, something that's going to last forever. And our Legacy Scholarship does that for our class. It gives us a way of constantly being in connection with each other and knowing that if $5 is all we can contribute, it's a big part of it. And it makes our class participation, makes us eligible for that award. And while the recognition is nice, it's not the most important part of it. It's being able, I think, to make a contribution and to know that you actually stood for something.
Well said, Betty, well said.
Brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
Historically, the class agent program was really the idea of, from experience, a previous Board of Trustee Chairman, Tommy Briggs. And when we were trying real hard in 2011, 2012 to attend a rather significant issue or problem with a low alumni participation for whatever reasons, and different people have different ideas, but the fact is Lees-McRae was not comparatively having a good enough participation, alumni participation. Now, and that is particularly grievous in that Lees-McRae should have a relatively, compared to other institutions, a relative high participation rate. Lees-McRae is a institution similar to the institutions that have the very high participation rates. I'm talking about, you could start at the top at Harvard, but in our area of Davidson and Wofford and Furman, smaller schools, independent schools, often a religious connected school, with most of the students living on campus, things that you can check the block for Lees-McRae, their participation rates are very favorably, well, they're much better than even like a large institution, the state universities. We should have a much higher participation rate than universities, because many of those students are day students that live off campus. They have distractions and their alternative allegiance to fraternities and different organizations. Well, at any rate, trying to attend that, the president or the chairman of the board of trustees, Tommy Brigham, had a wonderful experience at his college that he left after Lees-McRae. He's an alumnus of Lees-McRae. After leaving, he went to Emory and Henry, and they had a high percentage of participation, and they had a class agent program. He was familiar with that program and how it contributed. And I can remember sitting at a table with him and President Buxton, myself, and Carolyn Hart, who was a vice president for advancement then. And he talked through, we fine-tuned and didn't write down, which was probably a mistake. We tried to write down many times later. We were winging it, but we started a class agent program, and the recruitment of class agents is the key to the success, I think. But at any rate, as Betty shared her experiences, those who do well at the class agent program have a class agent who has a sense of responsibility and enjoyment and reward for doing this with the people she knows. And those people in the class, they're much, much more influenced by someone who they know calling and talking to them and giving them the good news about Lees-McRae and convincing them of the appropriateness or the rightness or the productivity of investing in a college that is doing good and is continuing to advance and do better. Now, I think there's another group of people that just need to be reminded of how much fun they had to get living, studying, enjoying life together on the campus of Banner Hill. And to have because of that, they have an obligation to assist and help the place that allowed that for us, or particularly we that didn't have many opportunities to have an opportunity like that and to have thrived because of it. And a class agent could do that. And particularly if it's like Betty and I together, we need to constantly be telling the whole class what's going on at Lees-McRae, inviting their attention to the good news, and when there's bad news, explaining it to them. Mm-hmm. So many things that when somebody is making the decision about continuing to support the college, they need to have information. To be agreeable, participative, and to contribute, you need information. You have to understand before you can agree to participate. You need to understand what's going on and understand both the benefit of giving and your obligation to give. So all of those things is a little my talking too much about a program that I think can be extremely effective, and it's not dependent upon the college. It's not dependent upon the advancement office. It's dependent upon the responsibility of alumni and classes, both to remember, don't forget, and admit the obligation they have to the college, and to talk about that, think about that, and to get together at reunions, have any way possible to relive the joys we shared together. The example of our joys, I think, we have done so much for projects on campus. We have an individual who has done a lot. Martha Lee Stone has done a lot individually. But then as a whole class, we have, by participation and smaller gifts, made large gifting projects possible on campus to beautify the campus. And one such little project, I put stepping stones of the brick on the walkway to the middle classroom between North Carolina building and Virginia. And at the end of that walkway, up next to the classroom, is a large stone that was taken from the Elk River, and engraved on it says something that is representative of our whole, I think, class participation and allegiance to and gifting to the college. And it says something, I can't remember the exact wording, but it talks about to a group of people who loved to study, to live, to achieve, and to be together at this place. And class of 1959, that's us.
Thank you both for sharing. You know, your words are powerful, and not often enough are you both given a chance to share these words that will resonate with the Alumni Association. So even during these times where I know we all miss being together physically here, to be able to record you all and have these conversations that we can share, I think is an extremely bright point, that we can come out of this homecoming not being together, but being able to share this with the Alumni Association and charge this next group of alumni who are coming up and who maybe want to take on the teamwork to revitalize the class participation. And so again, I know we aren't able to do this in person next weekend at the Green and Gold, but being able to have you all share this so that we can share these powerful words about transparency and being, you know, intentional, giving back to how authentic this experience is at Lees-McRae for the alumni, and reminding them is something that I'm very grateful for, and is something that we can't replace, like you said, by just having the award, but what it means. And so,
not that I can ever add anything to what Ken has to say, but he did make a comment that I really think is important, that the class agents are aware of what's going on at school. And in order to do that, the class agent has to establish a relationship. Much of the ease for me has been that Ken has a relationship, certainly with the Board of Trustees and with the administration. But over the years, I established very special relationships with Michelle, with your predecessors.
yeah.
They knew who I was. Jillian, we met personally, we corresponded, we kept in touch. That relationship is important. The conversation I was able to have with you and Sam, that to me cemented a relationship that I know who Katie Talbert is, and I can call her. I can get questions answered. It's not so much having an inside track as it is being able to be known and to be a part of, in a small way, part of the administration of the school, so that you can share with others what you know and what you've learned about what's going on at the school and how we can be of assistance. So I think those relationships, it's not enough to say you're the class agent, but you need to be part of what's going on and to establish good relationships at the school. You can edit that any way you want.
Well, you know, the best part for me is I have very little ability to do any editing technologically. So there's an amazing guy named Travis who will be watching this probably in about an hour, who's going to be doing all the editing for us. So Travis, thank you in advance.
Well, as you all know, I'm kind of feeble and getting more feeble as I get older. That's expected. I deal with that, but I have had way too many irons in the fire, and I still do, but I've extracted and am extracting a lot of them. But the one that bothers me the most, or the one that gives me some sorrow, is my inability to keep up and contribute as I have before at Lees-McRae. That is the most bothersome flaw, or it's not a failure, but it's certainly a very different and limited role that I play, and that's saddening.
Yeah.
So along those lines, because we do have a chance now to record, whereas before a lot of times the conversations weren't able to be captured other than writing down. And as you mentioned before with the class agent origination, sometimes not being able to write them down, we might miss them. So now that we have a chance to capture these on this recording, this is the 120th anniversary, which unfortunately, as much as we wish we could celebrate in person, we can't right now, but we can leave a few words for the next 120 years. And, you know, when I walk around the campus or when I drive in this morning and I'm getting overwhelmed thinking about it, it's beautiful here. And, you know, the rocks and the buildings that people bartered for their education, you know, the tough statue that means more than just, you know, the man that gets to wear the mask now and, you know, symbolizes where we were and where we are, but the message behind, you know, what your English teacher, Margaret Tufts, left you, and the hills and how they change. And no matter what the season and what's happening in the world, the leaves change and they fall and the snow will come. And then the spring comes and there's just such a history here. You know, there'll be another 120 years of Lees-McRae graduates and Lees-McRae alums. What are some parting words of wisdom that we can leave for them, that you all both can share from your time and the history that, you know, only you all have in your experiences?
Well, I know times change, and to stay competitive and even survive in today's educational world, it's difficult to reflect on, and well, it's easy to reflect on, but it's hard to maintain the goals, the objectives of Edgar Tufts. But we would be wise, and it is a challenge, and it's a rewarding challenge. If we could, as he 120 years ago brought forth on this Hemlock Hill, a very different and a very special educational institution. Nobody else can compare themselves to Lees-McRae, and we should resist comparing and making ourselves like other institutions only as it is necessary to survive. But at some point, even that I would question. But we need to be aware of and try to maintain that this school was dedicated in an ecumenical way to the proposition that that the students should be studying to contribute to society, and that diminishes the selfishness and the me role, and makes more promising, makes more valuable the role you can play to society. And I feel that we now in our nation have more problems than we perhaps have ever had. We have more ability, more resources, more money, more king of the hill positions. We're positioned well, but our views, our individual views of society and what we need to do to think about to live in that society, to contribute to it, is missing in education today. And that Lees-McRae is special in having been formed for that cause and reason in the mountains. And today's Lees-McRae student should have awareness of that and try to apply it to their lives in a much larger, even a world stage. Amen.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I have no doubt that Lees-McRae will continue to be successful, simply because I think the administration, certainly the current administration, appears to be very forward-thinking, while at the same time, we need to maintain those values, as Ken says, the values that we incorporated into our lives. I feel sure that students will continue to do that. Lees-McRae establishes an atmosphere that can't help but happen, but attention needs to be paid to be sure that while we look to the future, while we expand academic offerings, while we fit into what society needs these days, we also need to keep those values and those things that made Lees-McRae special. You cannot come away from Lees-McRae, at least in my day, without knowing where God is in your world and what role you have and how God fits into your life in the future. I was raised in a Christian home. I went to a Christian college. I'm still active in my church, as are very, very many of my friends from that time. And those values are what Lees-McRae, I think, really needs to keep. I realize we separate so many things, church and state, and we argue over all of that. But at the same time, it establishes, it grounds people, it gives you a future. And I know Lees-McRae will have a great future. I wish I could be part of it. Going forward, I have for as many, I'd love another 60 years, but not happening.
You know, last year at the Green and Gold meeting, the brunch, it was the first one I attended, and it was one of the first times I had the honor of hearing President King speak. And one of the things that he talked about was how during tough times, how colleges thrive and how they're going to thrive in this changing landscape of higher education. And the number one thing was that they have to be congruent. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard both of you, that you echo his sentiments. And, you know, I have it written up on my wall from a year ago. And he said, you know, we need to be congruent with who we were and find out what we're special at and continue with that in the future. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words of wisdom and sharing and being vulnerable, and for helping keep the next 120 years, the Lees-McRae, as special as it was for you. So thank you.
Are we going to be able to see this eventually?
Yeah. Well, after Travis works his magic, what they're going to do is they'll probably not even know what to do with all the amazing things that you've said. But I know part of it we'll use for the brunch in regards to the acceptance of the Captain's Class Agent Award. And then other parts that we're going to build into part of the homecoming site of, you know, memories from the mountains, people's homecoming memories.
Oh, cool.
You know, so we might use some on the athletics page, in particular your comments about Fred Dickerson, Coach Dickerson. So thank you. And once we have it downloaded, if you'd like, I can share the whole entire video with you all, so you have it as well.
After it's well edited. Katie, thank you for asking us to do this. I hope some of the
thanks, Katie, for the work you are doing at the college. You are making a difference, I'm sure. I'm not close enough to read the documents and watch what's going on, but I feel, and my instincts are pretty good after 81 years. So I think you're doing a good job, and I thank you for that very much.
Thank you. That means a lot. You all have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll get to see you back up here soon.
I hope so too. Take care. Bye, Ken.
Bye-bye.